Hello, and we are back in Planet Coaster today. We are working on Mount Olympus some more. After this episode, I figured out that it sounds like this is going to be a 3-part kind of series, just to get this mountain and coaster all finished. And in between episodes, I ended up redoing the coaster track, at least half of it. And hopefully you guys kind of like the updated version. I think it turned out fairly well, but then again, what do I know? I don't really know anything at all. So any feedback, of course, is still appreciated, but I'm going to get started with decorating because I can't sit there and basically fret over the track layout over and over and get no progress done on decoration. And so it's kind of going to set in concrete a lot of the track itself. And your guys' feedback, of course, is still important in my mind, but it might end up maybe being taken into maybe account for the next coaster rather than this one. But hey, anything else, links, articles, stuff like that for coaster design, I'm all ears and hope to learn some more anyways. So at the top here, this is pretty much what I spent most of the past 3 days building. It is a domed structure similar to the one down by the temple, but obviously a lot bigger. And a problem about this is that at the beginning you might have noticed me trying to use copy and paste and rotation to try and get this ring laid out. But I accidentally ended up putting the symmetry on the structure off center. And so copy and paste officially pretty much does not work at all on this thing. You can see we're off by about half a grid or a quarter of a grid. And eventually I even try and use the trick to make the grids a quarter unit rather than a full unit. And so that didn't work either. So pretty much I had to hand build and lay out all these tiles that make up the dome. Anyways, now I was gonna copy and paste and then move them around manually to make it look good to save up on a lot of time, but since I couldn't do that, manually placing them and trying to get the inside nice looking, I felt like was the most important thing, because obviously we're at such a high point and there's nothing really planned that's going to be taller than Mount Olympus here, so no one's really going to be paying much attention to the exterior of the roof. And so I spent most of the time on the interior, kind of making these windows line up and making them look hopefully good in your guys' eyes. And the main inspiration I guess I gathered from this dome is the fact that the Pantheon in Rome, kind of a real famous dome structure, has these, I guess, a grid-like pattern on the interior of the roof, and it kind of runs along. Now, the way those work in real life and how they actually make that dome is they start with a large square, kind of walk that around, and then it gets a little bit smaller as it gets closer and closer to the top, to where the square is probably, a quarter of its original size, if not smaller. And so you guys can go on Google Doc and look at some pictures of it, and hopefully mine, I guess, is reminiscent of that structure, but because I don't really have a square piece that gets smaller and smaller as it goes up, I had to use some overlapping, and it's visually noticeable, which is, I guess in my opinion, kind of the main downside to doing this technique for the dome. But from a distance, from down there by the arch and throughout the park, where this is basically visible throughout the whole thing, it looks great because you're looking up, you can see the grid pattern, and it's not this solid white roof line either. So yeah, basically it's just walking this grid pattern up, and then it goes 2 up, and then we're going to tilt it 15 degrees, go 2 up again, and so forth and so forth. I can use copy and paste in certain situations, like if we're going straight vertical, because that doesn't rely on snapping to the grid anymore. And so you can see for this initial kind of 2 rows here, I could use copy and paste somewhat effectively. I still had to go in and move them down a little bit just to make it all line up. So the exterior will also have a light pattern on it, but otherwise it's going to be this nice smooth white dome. And eventually I'll also add 2 pillars per each section instead of just the one, because the one, it didn't feel like it was going to be strong enough to hold up such a large structure, and so that is why it is like that. The roller coaster, hopefully you guys will get to see a good view of that here. Maybe after the time lapse I'll go around it, and I think also during the time lapse when we're decorating down on the mountainside, I end up following one of the coasters kind of throughout the track, and hopefully you guys can get kind of a good, I guess, take on maybe how it operates. Maybe at the end I'll do a more slower version of that shot. And right, so this episode we're gonna do this dome. Also on this dome, what's gonna happen is I didn't quite really want to build another plaza beneath this, and so it ended up being kind of a lake and a garden area kind of right underneath the roofing here, and then we'll add a waterfall off the mountain. The track follows the waterfall down until it, they diverge at the bottom, but that waterfall does look pretty nice using the the new, I guess, the SFX effects for the water jets, and so they were reliable. It has some issues. I wish kind of the main streams weren't quite as, I guess, obvious later on, but hey, here you can see kind of the patterning slowly starting to form. And in fact, there is kind of a large skip here, I guess, here in just about like 10 seconds or so, that I didn't want to record this whole thing because this took all day yesterday to make this roof and to get it to where I wanted it. And so we're going to end up skipping. We'll come back to the building once it's all kind of done. At this point, it is done, and I just want to try and get a bunch of bushes, trees, rocks, things to start making the mountain itself kind of pop out in areas, and then also try and cover up some of the cliff edge with some greenery to make it look more like a garden. Wow, I failed epically there. So these rocks, the backside I don't have to do much with, luckily, because we're doing this kind of row green that's following up the coaster itself. So the backside actually stays rather barren to the guests. It doesn't matter because no one's really going to go back there. Here, trying to notice the track being relatively close to the cliffside, and so we'll put some rocks around it just so maybe while you're riding it, it looks a little bit more detailed. In my opinion, the best thing to do in these situations is to make the coaster the most detailed thing, and the thing the coaster is closest to the most detailed thing, because obviously that is what everyone's going to be looking at as they're flying through this thing, and hopefully it looks nice for you guys. I like to ride it around every now and then just to make sure everything looks great, but of course, just like last time, we're not going to be riding it this episode. That'll be episode 3, in which case we'll be finishing up the mountain and finishing up the connection that goes underground back to the station. And someone left a comment last episode about the underground section, and they kind of guessed what I was going to do anyways. So I was going to kind of surprise you guys with it, but effectively the story, I guess, with this ride is the fact that you go up Mount Olympus and then you effectively get kicked off of it, tumble down the mountain, and then you go through the river Styx, where Hades is. And so that's the underground section. That section is relatively short. It's just kind of a quick underground river with, I was going to put a whole bunch of steam and some skeletons kind of sticking out of the water itself. We do have another plaza down here on the mountainside, just like the one that holds the pirate statue on your way up. This one, however, has a mermaid statue, and so simple copy and paste there. Nothing too fancy to really talk about in that sense. Just try to make the fountain look a little bit more unique. We used one of the pirate fountains, stuck a mermaid on top of it, stuck a ship in an area, just tried to make it look a little bit more bulky than the basic fountain that they give you. I'm not really a big fan of quite any of the fountains that they have just yet. None of them, I guess, are really super impressive, or at least they don't give us many objects to make them super impressive, at least not yet. In terms of sculpture, like I could probably build a building and make a fountain if I wanted to, but I want to use more sculptural elements, and I can't really sculpt a terrain that small into, say, a statue of a mermaid, because it just wouldn't be feasible in terms of space and voxels and things like that. So that's pretty much my only gripe with the current fountains that are in the game. So rock placement, very important. Trying to make them follow the track here and there, the areas where it kind of cut away at the ground, and I'm really happy with how this is turning out. And at a distance, you know, everything's just starting to look really lush and really, I guess in my opinion, like a spot where maybe a god or goddess would live. Here you can see the divergence from the waterfall, from the track. It actually ends up going down all the way to the bottom, and I will be putting kind of a lazy river element along the side of the temple there. And then eventually, this kind of popped into my head as I was finishing working on this. You guys know the, I guess, I don't know what the proper term for these called, but I'm pretty sure they're like 0G hills or something like that, where you go up and down. I'm going to put the aqueduct by those. Here, you can see, just kind of watching the coaster go around, you can kind of look and pause if you want to here to see the new shape of it. It's a lot more, it interacts with itself a lot more, and I feel like that's probably the biggest and best advice that I get. It was the fact that the track should be interacting with the terrain and also interacting with itself, you know, making kind of interesting shapes with it. And I think at least accomplished a basic, decent looking coaster. There might be some areas that are better looking than others, but I think overall it's relatively successful, and I do like having the coaster go around that plaza. So adding some sculptural elements throughout, though some of them of course did not work out as I wanted, so I just skipped it for now. And this is pretty much where it's going to end. I do end up copying, I guess, the entrance to the bathhouse over to the left side, the back side of the mountain, because I do want another kind of temple entrance back here, just so we have another larger building element. And we'll be finishing this side of the mountain next episode, and then of course the underside, and maybe cleaning up some of the mountain edges and stuff. But I think the library is going to dictate kind of where all we're gonna take that to, and that'll be here in the next, I guess this week we'll hopefully have enough to start the library and get that started, and we'll be adding, I think the new carousel that they added to the game will look great in the plaza of the Library of Alexandria. And also it was pointed out that I'm using some Greek elements, obviously. It's not all just a Roman themed area. And so I might end up just kind of renaming this area of the park, the classical area. That way it makes a little bit more sense from what you're seeing. You know, you're seeing Mount Olympus, which is Greek. You're seeing, you know, bathhouse, which is Roman. You're seeing the Library of Alexandria, which is Greek. And so it's very, very mixed. Anyways, so that's it for the speed build, and I'll see you guys after some of the nice shots. Alright, so here we are, end of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the speed build process. of, I guess, all the scenery down here and getting started on a dome structure. It's a relatively simple process to do this. It's just kind of boring and methodical. And yeah, here is some nice good shots of everything right now. The game is paused though, so let me just unpause that so you can see the water running. I kind of wish there was a way to adjust how quick the water was falling down, because it is being launched out of a jet and then falling with gravity, so it is moving maybe a little bit faster than it should be otherwise. And I wish there was ways to kind of layer it and make it a little bit more of a thicker coverage. Like this section here looks great, but the fountain kind of nodes here are a little bit distracting of an element. I did have to turn down my graphics to medium to put all these SFX in here to, you know, get some decent frames, which I'm fine with. The game really didn't drop much in quality. The only thing maybe is the LOD of some of the shadows and details, but you know, I'm fine with it. Usually people are about this distance away anyways, but if I did have it on high again, all this water effect would be killing my FPS. So, well, here comes the coaster again, trying to make a drop. And I'll go ahead and do a little bit of a look at it so you guys can see how the coaster is traveling right now. I do like this kind of figure 8 that it goes around through here. I think it's relatively effective at, I guess, giving some sense of speed and some lateral G's onto the passengers as they kind of travel around. See, no second lift hill. This is just all from the single one drop there. And I think I did add one little booster track piece here just to maintain the speed throughout this whole section. And then off it goes down into where Hades is. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you all enjoy the video, feel free to subscribe. If you're new, go ahead and like the video so I know you guys are enjoying this kind of stuff as always. Leave a comment down below on what you might want to see changed, fixed, adjusted to your liking, and I will see if I can accommodate such a thing. Big shout out to you guys from the last video who helped me kind of review and go over this, and of course Silverat and his comments were much appreciated. So yeah, until then, I'll see you guys in some more Planet Coaster.